What is the definitions of working relationships form that realtors have you sign? How important is it that you sign it? And what impact does it have on your transaction? On this episode of The Chris John Show, we will discuss this form and its impact on your real estate deal. So let's start with what exactly the definitions of working relationship form is. This is a form that real estate agents are required to disclose to any buyer or seller prior to showing any property. Its main purpose is to explain to all parties what capacity the agents engage in for the transaction. For instance, are they going to represent the seller, the buyer, or are they going to assist both sides with facilitating this transaction? Let's take a look at the form and go over each section. Let's first start with the seller's agent. In this case, a seller's agent, or also known as a listing agent, works with the sellers with the utmost good faith, loyalty, and fidelity. Their responsibility lies with the seller, and in layman terms, they represent the seller. They are required to let any buyer know about any adverse material facts known by the seller or the agent about a particular property, such as if there was mold present on the property, or if they know the house was a meth home. Now, I always recommend that buyers take this into consideration if they are not using a real estate agent to represent them. And remember that the agent represents the sellers and not the buyer. So as an example, if you were a buyer and you told a seller's agent that you were interested in a home that they represent on behalf of the seller, and you told that agent that you were going to offer, say, $250,000, but you'd be willing to pay as high as $300,000, well, guess what? That seller's agent must tell the sellers that you are willing to pay as high as $300,000 because they do not represent you. Their only responsibility is to notify you of any adverse material facts. So this leads us to our next type of agency, and one you should consider if you are looking to purchase a home. So let's talk about a buyer's agent. A buyer's agent works solely on behalf of the buyer to promote their interests on behalf of the buyer with the utmost good faith, loyalty, and fidelity. The agent negotiates on behalf and acts as an advocate for the buyer. The buyer's agent must disclose to potential sellers all adverse material facts actually known by the buyer's agent, including the buyer's financial ability to perform to the terms of the transaction, and if a residential property, whether the buyer intends to occupy the property or treat it as an investment property. Now, as an example of how this can benefit you as a buyer let's take a look at the example from before, where in the situation before you were going to offer $300,000 for a property, and the buyer's agent is told by the sellers that they would love to get $300,000, but in conversation they mentioned that they would take as low as $250,000. Well, in this case, as the buyer's agent, they must notify you that this information was disclosed to them. So in this case, you could actually get a better deal on the property. Now, the last type of agency is transaction broker. In this situation, the transaction broker assists the buyer or seller or both throughout a real estate transaction by performing terms of any written or oral agreement. The responsibility includes informing the parties, presenting all offers, and assisting the parties with any contracts, including the closing of the transaction, without being an agent or advocate for any of the parties. They must notify both the buyer and seller of any adverse material facts, and they must also notify the seller of the buyer's ability to perform financially and whether or not the buyer intends to occupy the property. Now, there is one last item to discuss, which is the definition of a customer. A customer is a party to a real estate transaction with whom the broker has no brokerage relationship because such party has not engaged or employed the broker either as the party's agent or as the party's transaction broker. An example of this would be if the agent was a seller's agent representing the seller and a buyer comes along and the buyer is not represented by another agent, nor do they wish to employ the broker representing the sellers. Basically, the sellers would have a seller's agent and the buyer would be a customer who is not represented. So the big question is, are you required to sign this form? And the answer is no. You do not have to sign this form. However, there's very little risk in signing this form. It is not a contract and you are not engaging or giving away any rights by signing this form. You are simply acknowledging to the agent that they have informed you and explained the different types of relationships. So feel free to sign away, and if you have any questions about this form or any other questions about other forms or the home buying process, simply click on the link below or contact us via the information at the end of this video. And we'll see you next time.